not to release what was truly wrong with him earlier was that it was nobody else's business.
By the late 1980s, rumors were rampant that Freddie was sick. Mercury did his best to avoid the news.
La televisión del espectáculo.
Freddie Mercury, rock and roll icon and lead singer of the wildly successful band Queen. Freddie was one of the most outrageous and flamboyant characters of the 1970s and 80s. To Freddie, all the world was a stage. His incredible talent, along with his uncanny ability to connect with his audiences, made Freddie a beloved figure in the music world. Sadly, Freddie Mercury was the first rock star to fall victim to AIDS. His illness alerted millions of fans all over the world to the reality of a killer virus and the inconceivable devastation to come.
From the very beginning, we were concerned about the potential for this being a very large epidemic.
On this episode of Mysteries and Scandals, we'll relive the triumphant and often extravagant days of a rock and roll legend.
Freddie was the consummate performer. He had the audience in the palm of his hand.
I always thought of myself as a sophisticated person until I began to hang out with Queen, and then I realized how much bigger the universe was.
And we'll look at how Freddie bravely stared death in the face and sang his heart out right to the end.
He was determined to fight it as hard as he could and to get as much recorded as he could.
People tend to think that when you're famous, you're very tough and that you can cope with any situation, and it's not true.
I'm A.J. Benza. Join me as we examine the life of rock and roll's consummate showman, Freddie Mercury, and learn why he almost took his tragic secret to the grave. Freddie Mercury died from complications of AIDS on November 24th, 1991. He was just 45 years old. Friends and family scattered Freddie's ashes along the banks of Lake Geneva, Switzerland, his adopted home. A dynamic life had come to an abrupt and tragic end. Freddie's life began on September 5th, 1946, as Farouk Balsara, the son of a conservative Persian couple. Biographer Jim Jenkins.
He was born in Zanzibar, East Africa, and his parents lived there. His father worked for the British government. He started to go to school in Zanzibar, and then his parents wanted something better for him, and they sent him over to boarding school in India, just outside Bombay.
Freddie Mercury biographer David Brett.
He didn't live in a normal family environment. Also, of course, in the public school where he was, it was a multicultural one. You had all kinds of religions. At assembly in the morning, they would do Yiddish chants and Gregorian chants and that kind of stuff. So I suppose he was confused about everything. He was confused about his religion, about his sexuality.
Jackie Smith heads up the Queen fan club.
He loved sports and he loved music generally as well. He learned his piano at school.
Western music filtered through, and he started picking up on that. And he wanted to be in a band. So a couple of the guys in school said, let's form our own band, which he did. They were called the Hectics.
But back home in Zanzibar, civil unrest forced Freddie's family to leave the country. So Freddie said goodbye to India and joined his family in London. 20-year-old Freddie wanted to pursue a career in music, but to please his parents, he enrolled in a local university.
Freddie was in school at our college with Tim Steffel, who was a singer in a band. So Tim said, oh, do you want to come to rehearsals? He went along and met Brian May and Roger Taylor. So Freddie would be there watching, and he was itching to get into a group. He started going to the shows, and he was watching them, and it was like, I don't think you should be doing this. I think you should do it like that. So when they came off stage, he was saying, do this, do that. This is how I would do it.
Eventually they started kind of taking his advice a little, I think. And then when Tim decided to leave to become famous, which unfortunately didn't happen, Freddie stepped in.
And right from the start, Freddie Mercury was determined to do it his way, beginning with the name of the band.
The name of Queen came from Freddie, and I know Roger and John weren't very keen at the time.
It was just something that people would remember the name. It was Shaw, Regal, Queen.
Queen recorded their first album in 1971. Roy Thomas Baker was the group's producer.
First album, we did it in downtime, which is time that the studio's not actually working, you know, like 2 o'clock in the morning. It was a bit difficult because we never had a full chunk of time in the studio. It was more a case of, oh, there's a couple of hours tonight, can we do a quick vocal overdub?
Friend and journalist David Wigg.
Freddie's music talent was a tremendous gift. I think he was master. He knew exactly what he wanted, and he was a perfectionist. And in the studio, he could be very demanding. He was very demanding.
The relationship we had in the studio was that I would not sit here. I would sit on the other side of the mixer, close to the window. He would stay on the other side, and we could communicate to each other during the take just by looking at each other. Some studios have the control room on one level and the studios downstairs. He insisted on having a TV camera on me so he could see my face whilst he was singing. And that way he could actually see by my expressions whether it was a good take or not. I don't know whether it makes sense, but it seemed to work.
But it didn't work out right away. The first album went nowhere. It wasn't until Queen's third album, Sheer Heart Attack, released in 1975, that the band really took off. Thanks to Freddie, Queen became as well known for the band's outrageous stage shows as for the music. Bryn Breidenthal is head of publicity for Geffen Records.
Freddie could control and work an audience like nobody I have ever seen before or since. It was a real relationship.
Freddie Mercury is flamboyance on stage. The fact that when he got up on stage, he really didn't give a shit. You know, it was everything. He just went for it.
He was totally over the top, and he didn't care a damn. I mean, he would go on and, you know, wear all those incredible clothes, and the audience loved it.
To see hundreds of thousands of people, particularly in some place like Brazil, where they speak Portuguese, singing along in this perfect English, carrying the melody really loud and clear. It wasn't just a roar of sound, it was a proper chorus. It was like the world's biggest choir.
Even with a couple 100,000 adoring fans, Freddie Mercury went home alone. Well, maybe not straight home. Up next, Freddie's secret lifestyle, and a look backstage at some of Freddie's outlandish parties. Queen remains one of the most successful bands in the history of rock music. Some of the group's hits include songs like Bohemian Rhapsody, We Are the Champions, and We Will Rock You. The band made millions, but the driving force behind the success of Queen was the wild and unpredictable lead singer, Freddie Mercury. As talented as he was flamboyant, Freddie had a gift for performing. Offstage, Freddie was just as wild. This guy could throw one hell of a party.
The parties that Freddie gave were legendary. He loved to spend his money and enjoy it.
Let's take over the Fairmont Hotel and have a party. And it was that type of thing. It was very, very outrageous. It was very good fun.
They had all these relief rooms, you know, which you know what that's for. The men went in one and the women went in another. And there was cocaine all lined up and there was much booze or anything as you wanted. I mean, it was just so outrageous.
It was wild and decadent and racy, and I saw things I'd never seen before in my entire life.
Well, he was going to have a black and white drag ball in a Munich nightclub. Freddie was such a perfectionist that he actually arranged for a top makeup artist to have all his guests made up perfectly before the party. Then he had limousines arriving one after the other to take them all in drag, in black and white drag, to this party he was given. It was incredible.
It was all in good fun, I suppose, so who are we to criticise that?
And I mean, not every one of them featured mud wrestlers and dwarfs with cocaine on their heads and whatever else people have quoted. I mean, you know, most of them were quite normal, really. But just lots of alcohol, lots of fun, you know, lots of noise.
Despite the lavish parties and all the mud wrestlers and drug-toting dwarfs money could buy, Freddie Mercury was, at his core, a very lonely man.
Freddie's private life was never as rewarding as his stage life or his career. I mean, he told me that he was never, ever that happy about his private life. He was always searching for someone to truly love him.
But Freddie had a tight circle of trusted friends who helped keep his decadent lifestyle, as well as his true sexuality, a secret.
He became promiscuous because he was always searching for, in his case, Mr. Right, and that person never seemed to come along. And he always used to think, well, maybe the next one is going to be the croc at the end of the rainbow.
Freddie loved sex, and he had lots of sex in his life, lots of relationships. He told me he was really looking for someone to settle down with him, and he had this big problem of, do they love me because I'm Freddie Mercury, or do they love the real me?
He even kept quiet. I mean, if you can keep something like described, he was even gay because of the female fan base.
Sexual peccadillos aside, Freddie was known for being a faithful and loving friend.
Freddie inspired loyalty in people.
You knew that he would always be loyal to you. Like, if he was a friend or even an acquaintance, he would be a very loyal one.
I remember when I was in Rio, we went to this nightclub. No, it can be pretty violent at night. I didn't know that. I decided to go back to my hotel, and I went to say goodbye to him. He just immediately called his bodyguard over and said, John, David's leaving now, take him back, make sure he gets there safely. He had that extra polish that other rock stars never had. I've been with so many rock stars who they wouldn't care about a journalist getting back to his hotel. They wouldn't care if a journalist got stabbed in the back, I would think, probably. He would do that with everybody. He was always concerned that someone was okay and that we were all right.
But what nobody except his closest friends knew was that Freddy was far from all right. Up next, the plague of the 20th century rears its ugly head, and Freddie Mercury begins his agonizing dance with death. In the 1970s and 80s, Queen was one of the hottest bands in rock and roll, and lead singer Freddie Mercury was one of the most flamboyant performers of the time. Freddie's life offstage was just as crazy, filled with extravagant parties and a steady stream of love affairs, which, like the parties, were usually over by the next morning. But during the decadent days of the 1970s, Freddie was playing a deadly game of Russian roulette. Like the rest of the world, Freddie Mercury had never heard of something called AIDS. Dr. Michael Gottlieb is a pioneer in the field of AIDS research.
It was 1980 when we first started seeing patients who seemed to have something that was new. And Dr. Weissman and I evaluated a number of those patients, and we decided this was something that hadn't been seen before.
AIDS researcher Dr. Joel Weissman.
They were seeing an unusual kind of cancer called Kaposi sarcoma. Dr. Gottlieb and I had cases of a mysterious mononucleosis type of disease. We developed unusual rashes, fungal infections, and ultimately pneumocystis.
We studied it and described the features of what we now call AIDS. And we reported this to the Centers for Disease Control in Atlanta on June 5th, 1981. And that, I think, is the official start date of the AIDS epidemic.
Nobody knows exactly when Freddie was infected or when he was diagnosed. But in those days, doctors could offer no hope. One of the first close friends Freddie confided in was famed Spanish opera singer Montserrat Caballé, who told Freddie's story to biographer David Brett.
When he became very ill, and when he knew that it was AIDS, he went to see Montserrat afterwards and said, "I've been told today, I've got some terrible news." So he just said, "I'm going to die," and, burst into tears.
You have to remember that when Freddie had AIDS, it was a very different time. And people were not as enlightened. The universe was not the same as it is now.
It's definitely a gay stigma about it, that this was a gay disease.
We didn't know what he had. I think everyone guessed. But he hadn't been made public knowledge.
Freddie decided to keep his illness a secret from the press.
I don't know whether they kept it quiet because of the business side or just kept it quiet because they were in denial or didn't want to talk about it. No one spoke about it, but we all knew.
The decision not to release what was truly wrong with him earlier was that it was nobody else's business.
By the late 1980s, rumors were rampant that Freddie was sick. Mercury did his best to avoid the media.
The press over in Britain, they are, I won't swear, but they're really bad. I think they're evil. They delve into people. They want to know what people's private lives are. And he didn't want people with cameras outside his front door. He just wanted to be left alone. And I think if he would have announced that he had AIDS, can you imagine what it would have been like for him?
Just because you have a public life doesn't mean you have to open up your heart and soul and expose everything there is to the public. That price would be too high.
It's an issue of privacy. It's an issue of whether you can continue to support yourself.
But try as he might, Freddie couldn't escape the sleazy tactics of the tabloid press.
We have this scum newspaper over in Britain called The Sun. And one of their reporters or photographers or whatever was outside his house and caught him on a visit to the doctor. And he didn't look well. He wasn't well. And of course they published that photograph.
From that day on, he very rarely ventured out. He was virtually a prisoner in that house, because he knew there was going to be someone snooping somewhere with a lens around a corner that he couldn't see, waiting to see him deteriorate. And it was obvious he was going to deteriorate.
HIV is a virus that attacks the immune system. It attacks a type of white blood cell. And when that happens, a person becomes susceptible to certain illnesses, serious illnesses, that they wouldn't otherwise get.
It was just awful to see him, because that lively, wonderful person was kind of sitting there at home and still there. You know, he was still Fred. He was still kind of his mind was all there. But it was just so sad to see that fabulous physique, you know, was disappearing.
In February of 1990, Freddy, now 44 years old, made his last public appearance at a British award show. Although Freddy was too sick to tour, he was still able to record in the studio.
He was determined to fight it as hard as he could and to get as much recorded as he could. He told members of the band, you know, there isn't much time. We have to do as much as possible, but you've got to bear with me. So on a good day, he would record just a few lines at a time if necessary because he got so tired.
His body was weak. He couldn't stand up. Yet his voice, you listen to that voice and you go, God, some of those songs you think were recorded years ago, and it was, I need to work. I don't want to just sit in a chair, lay in a bed and die. I want to work. And it was, write the music and I'll go and do it.
When he was good, he recorded. When he wasn't good, then he rested. And that's how it went on. And they gave him as many drugs to keep him going. The doctors kept him going as long as possible.
But unfortunately, time was running out. Up next, Freddy finally breaks the tragic news to his adoring fans. On November 23rd, 1991, Freddie Mercury, the lead singer of Queen, made an announcement to the media. After several years of battling AIDS and denying rumors that he was sick, Freddie finally confirmed his illness. The truth was now known to the world. Freddie Mercury was dying, but Freddie was going out on his own terms.
He told the doctor that was looking after him that he wasn't going to take any more of the drugs. And he basically decided that he was going to make his exit himself, which was, I mean, although he was very ill, a very brave thing to do.
When he knew that he was dying, then the statement had to come out. And I think it was very brave to do it.
Here's the statement Freddie made to the press. Following the enormous conjecture in the press over the past 2 weeks, I wish to confirm that I've tested HIV positive and have AIDS. However, the time has come for my friends and fans around the world to know the truth, and I hope you will join with me and my doctors and all those worldwide in the fight against this terrible disease.
I didn't want to believe that he was really terminally sick. I couldn't imagine the world without Freddie Mercury.
At 7 p.m. the following day, Sunday, November 24th, 1991, 45-year-old Freddie Mercury died of AIDS-related pneumonia.
I got a phone call on a Sunday evening to tell me that he died, and I was physically ill. Couldn't believe it. It's like losing a friend, losing someone who I admired and I thought a lot of, and it took a long time to get over.
Freddie's funeral on November 27th was a quiet gathering of family and friends, including Elton John and the members of Queen.
The sad thing is that the doctor now says that if it had happened now, because of all the advancement with AIDS treatment, that he probably would still be with us, which is such a terrible loss.
I think Freddie would have been, in his way, very proud that the fact that he admitted and said, I have AIDS, this is the disease, and you've got to fight this disease.
He and Rock Hudson were the two really great stars who brought AIDS into public knowledge, and had they not died of it, I don't think the world would have been as aware of it as they are now. People became more aware of what was happening because of their bravery towards the end of their life.
Following his death, Freddie's generosity of spirit continued with a substantial bequest to AIDS research.
He gave such a lot of money away. He got in touch with an AIDS trust kind of thing to make sure that all the hospices in London all had a Christmas dinner on him, you know, that kind of thing. And he gave, £2 million away just before he died to AIDS charities.
He's always had a lot of dignity, and he certainly went out with it.
In April of 1992, a Freddie Mercury tribute concert was held in London to raise money for AIDS. Performers included the band Metallica.
Queen is one of rock's true original bands. There was never anything like Queen or Freddie Mercury before them. Even though that a lot of people would not necessarily draw parallels between Metallica or Queen or whatever, it's just getting a chance to pay your respects to true originals.
I was there at the Wembley tribute show, standing there with John Deacon, and we're holding our hands like this, and he said, it was a really great life, wasn't it? And just thinking about it starts to make me teary.
He told me once that my big wish is that one day I'll go on stage in a wheelchair and I will perform. I want to go on as an old man and perform from a wheelchair I never want to stop.
I think people should look back on Freddie Mercury as a showman. Each generation has its showman.
We do an annual fan club convention every year. We've got some stuff from the band, of personal items for the auction, for a charity auction. He said, I've got this leotard thingy. He said, Diamante studded crutch. He said, specially made for me, worn once, Hyde Park. Would you like it? I'm nearly on the floor. I'm thinking, well, I like it. Wow. I said, Freddie, I love it. So, okay, dear, and one more thing. And I said, yes, what's that? He said, the best of luck at the weekend. He said, but one thing, he said, whatever you do it with style. But that's always stuck with me. The one thing, whatever you do it with style. And that summed him up to me.
If you walked in this room now, you'd know about it. He'd make himself known. And that's just the way he was. He had a presence, this aura about him, you know. It's like, wow, it's Freddie Mercury.
Many have tried to imitate him, but there'll never be another Freddie Mercury. A hero to millions, not only for his music, but for the courage he showed in facing the most dreaded disease of our time. I'm A.J. Benza. Join me the next time we take a look at the men behind the myths on Mysteries and Scandals.